The thunder crashed overhead as Marguerite Bennett huddled in the corner of the Rockingham Ranch stable, her tears mixing with the rainwater dripping from her sodden dress. Her wedding ring, the golden shackle that had bound her to Gerald Thompson for 3 miserable years, glinted mockingly in the dim lantern light as she cradled her bruised wrist. It was 1878, and in Silver Creek, Colorado, a woman had few options. Even fewer when that woman was married to the most influential businessman in the county. She hadn't heard the stable door open over the pounding rain, hadn't noticed the tall figure until his shadow fell across the straw-covered floor. "Madam." The voice was deep, concerned, with a slight Texas drawl. "You all right there?" Marguerite startled, hastily wiping her tears and pulling her shawl tighter to cover the darkening bruise on her cheek. "I'm fine," she said automatically, the lie bitter on her tongue. "Just taking shelter from the storm." The cowboy crouched down, keeping a respectful distance. His face was partially obscured by the brim of his hat, but she could see kind eyes studying her with unmistakable concern. "That's quite a storm to leave such marks," he said quietly, nodding toward her face where she'd failed to completely hide the evidence of Gerald's latest rage. Marguerite looked away, shame burning her cheeks. Nobody in town acknowledged what happened behind the Thompsons' grand doors. Nobody dared. "He'll be looking for me soon," she whispered, more to herself than to the stranger. The cowboy was silent for a long moment, rainwater dripping from his duster onto the stable floor. Then he said 7 words that would change everything. "You don't have to go back there." Marguerite looked up, truly seeing him for the first time, a tall man with broad shoulders, weather-beaten skin that spoke of long days under the sun, and eyes that held no judgment, only compassion. "I don't even know you," she said, her voice barely audible over the rain. "Owen Riley," he said simply, touching the brim of his hat. "New foreman at the Rockingham, and you're Mrs. Thompson." Of course he knew who she was. Everyone in Silver Creek knew the beautiful wife of Gerald Thompson, owner of the town's bank, mercantile, and half its businesses. "I can't just leave," Marguerite said, though something in her heart leapt at the suggestion. "He would find me. He always does." Owen Riley stood, offering his hand. "Not if you're somewhere he wouldn't think to look." Marguerite stared at his outstretched hand, her mind racing. To leave would mean abandoning everything she knew. It would mean facing the unknown with a stranger whose only qualification was that he hadn't yet hurt her. But to stay. Another crash of thunder shook the stable, and somewhere in that sound, Marguerite heard her answer. She took his hand. Owen helped her to her feet, his touch gentle but firm. "My sister has a place up in the mountains. No one would think to look for you there while we figure something more permanent." "We?" Marguerite questioned, already feeling light-headed with the enormity of what she was considering. "I made you an offer, Mrs. Thompson. I don't aim to leave you stranded halfway through." His eyes met hers, steady and sure. "I know what it's like to need an escape route." Outside, the rain continued to pour, washing away tracks, erasing evidence. A perfect night to disappear. "I have nothing," Marguerite said, the reality of her situation crashing down. "No money, no clothes but what I'm wearing." "Sometimes nothing is exactly what you need to start over," Owen replied. "My horse is strong enough for 2. We can be halfway to the foothills before dawn." Marguerite thought of Gerald, likely deep in his whiskey by now. By morning his rage would be terrible. Her hand unconsciously went to her ribs, still tender from the last time she'd disappointed him. "He'll come looking," she warned. "Let him," Owen said, a hardness entering his voice for the first time. "Some men don't deserve what they have." The decision crystallized in Marguerite's mind. 3 years of fear and pain had taught her caution, but also desperation. And something about Owen Riley's steady gaze made her believe him when most men's words had proven worthless. "I need to get something first," she said. "From the house." Owen nodded. "I'll saddle my horse. Be quick and careful." Marguerite slipped out into the rain, keeping to the shadows as she made her way back to the grand house on the hill. Not to the main entrance, but to the servants' door that was never locked. Inside, she moved silently through the darkened kitchen, up the back stairs to the bedroom she shared with Gerald. She could hear his snores from the hall, passed out drunk, as she'd hoped. Still, her heart pounded as she eased the door open just enough to slip inside. The room was dark save for the occasional flash of lightning through the curtains. Gerald's bulky form was sprawled across the bed, one arm flung out where he would have expected to find her. Marguerite moved to her dressing table, carefully sliding open the bottom drawer. Beneath a stack of handkerchiefs lay a small leather pouch, her mother's locket, and the few pieces of jewelry that had been hers before marriage. Gerald had never known about them, her one small secret in a life where privacy was forbidden. She took only this and a photograph of her parents, long dead now, nothing that Gerald would immediately notice missing. As she turned to leave, her gaze fell on her husband's coat, draped over a chair. His wallet would be in the inside pocket, full from his day at the bank. For a moment she was tempted. It would be justice of a sort to take his money to use it for her escape. But the risk was too great. If he woke and found her here. Marguerite backed away, clutching her small treasures, and slipped out as silently as she had entered. By the time she returned to the stable, Owen had a sturdy buckskin saddled and ready. He'd added saddlebags and a bedroll and was securing a rifle to the saddle when she appeared. "Got what you need?" he asked, eyes scanning the yard behind her. Marguerite nodded, holding up her small bundle. "It's not much, but it's mine. That's all that matters." Owen helped her mount, then swung up behind her. "Hold tight now. The trail gets rough once we leave town." As they rode away from Silver Creek, the rain began to ease, and Marguerite felt something unfamiliar bloom in her chest. Hope, fragile but persistent, like the first wildflowers after winter. She didn't know this man whose arms encircled her as he guided the horse. Didn't know what awaited her in the mountains or beyond. But for the first time in 3 years, she was moving towards something instead of enduring what she couldn't escape. The journey through the night was arduous. The rain had turned the trails muddy and treacherous, and Owen kept them off the main roads, winding through pine forests and across rocky streams. Marguerite, unused to long rides, felt every muscle protesting, but she didn't complain. Each mile between her and Gerald was a victory. As the eastern sky began to lighten with the first hints of dawn, they crested a ridge and Owen reined the horse to a stop. "There," he said, pointing to a small cabin nestled in a clearing below. Smoke curled from its chimney, a welcoming beacon in the wild landscape. "My sister Martha's place." "Will she mind?" Marguerite asked, suddenly anxious. A stranger arriving without warning. Owen's chuckle rumbled against her back. "Martha's been taking in strays since she was knee-high to a grasshopper. Birds with broken wings, lost travelers, runaway brides. You won't be her first rescue." "I'm not a runaway bride," Marguerite corrected, her voice sharper than intended. "I'm a wife fleeing her husband." Owen was quiet for a moment. "Forgive me," he finally said. "You're right, and that's a much braver thing." They descended the slope toward the cabin, both lost in their own thoughts. As they approached, the door swung open and a woman stepped onto the porch, rifle in hand. "That's far enough until I know who's coming," she called out. "Put that gun down before you shoot something important, Martha," Owen called back. "It's just me." The woman lowered her rifle, shaking her head. "Owen Riley, You know better than to come calling at the break of dawn without sending word ahead." Her gaze shifted to Marguerite and her expression softened. "And you've brought company." Owen dismounted, then helped Marguerite down. Her legs nearly buckled after the long ride, but she forced herself to stand straight as Owen made introductions. "Martha, this is Mrs. Thompson from Silver Creek. She's in need of a place to stay for a while. Mrs. Thompson, my sister Martha Riley." Martha's sharp eyes took in Marguerite's bruised face, the way she held herself as if protecting injured ribs, and the conspicuous absence of luggage. Understanding dawned in her expression. "Well, you're welcome here as long as you need," she said simply. "Come inside and get warm. You look half frozen, both of you." The cabin was small but neat, with a fire blazing in the stone hearth. The smells of coffee and fresh bread filled the air, making Marguerite realize how hungry she was. "Sit," Martha commanded, pointing to the table. "I'll fetch another cup." As Marguerite sank gratefully into a chair, Owen removed his hat and duster, hanging them by the door. In the growing light, she could see him clearly for the first time younger than she'd initially thought, perhaps 30, with dark hair and a face that, while weathered by sun and wind, had a kindness to its angles. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for everything." Owen shook his head. "Don't thank me yet. We're not in the clear." Martha returned with coffee and slices of fresh bread slathered with butter and honey. "Eat first," she said. "Talk later." They obeyed, Marguerite suddenly ravenous. It was only when she reached for her second slice of bread that she noticed Martha studying her wedding ring. "Thompson," Martha said thoughtfully. "Would that be Gerald Thompson, the banker?" Marguerite froze, her appetite evaporating. "Yes." Martha and Owen exchanged a look loaded with meaning. "That complicates things," Owen said. "What do you mean?" Marguerite asked, though she already knew. Gerald Thompson wasn't just any husband, he was a man with money, influence, and connections throughout the territory. "He won't let you go easily," Martha said bluntly. "Men like that, they think they own their wives more surely than their horses or their land." "I know," Marguerite whispered. "But," Martha continued, rising to pour more coffee, "that doesn't mean it can't be done. It just means we need to be smarter than him." Marguerite looked between the siblings, bewildered by their calm acceptance of her situation, their willingness to help a stranger at considerable risk to themselves. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. "Either of you. You don't know me." Owen's gaze met hers across the table. "Some things you just know are right," Martha snorted. "My brother's always been a soft touch for a lost cause," but her tone was affectionate. "As for me, well, let's just say I've seen what men like Thompson can do to a woman. I won't stand by and watch it happen if I can help." "He'll come looking," Marguerite warned, echoing her earlier words to Owen. "He's relentless when he thinks someone's taken something that belongs to him." "Let him look," Martha said, steel in her voice. "This cabin's off any map, and the few who know it's here wouldn't sell us out." "What you need to decide," Owen said gently, "is what you want to happen next. We can get you to Denver, maybe further. A fresh start somewhere Thompson has no reach." Marguerite stared into her coffee, watching the steam rise and curl. 3 years ago, she'd married Gerald Thompson, thinking she was securing her future after her parents' deaths left her alone and vulnerable. Now she was contemplating running even further from everything familiar. "I don't know," she admitted. "I haven't allowed myself to want things for so long." Martha's hand covered hers, warm and steady. "Then that's the first thing to fix. For now, you need rest. We can talk more later." Marguerite nodded, suddenly exhausted as the adrenaline of escape began to fade. Martha showed her to a small but clean bedroom, lending her a nightgown and promising hot water for washing later. Left alone, Marguerite sank onto the edge of the bed. Through the window, she could see the mountains rising majestically against the morning sky, so different from her view in Silver Creek. She thought she should feel afraid, lost, uncertain. Instead, she felt the first tentative stirrings of freedom. When Marguerite awoke, sunlight was streaming through the window, and for a disorienting moment she couldn't remember where she was. Then it all came flooding back: Gerald's rage, the stable, Owen's unexpected offer, the nighttime ride to this hidden cabin. She sat up gingerly, her body aching from the unaccustomed horseback ride. A basin of water sat on the small dresser, still faintly steaming, with a clean towel beside it. On the chair lay clothing not her own, but a simple blouse and skirt that looked as though they might fit. After washing and dressing, Marguerite examined herself in the small mirror above the dresser. The bruise on her cheek had darkened to a vivid purple, impossible to hide. She touched it gently, remembering Gerald's face as his hand connected with her skin. He'd been angry about dinner, some minor imperfection in the roast that only he could detect. It had been such a small thing. They were always small things. Taking a deep breath, she turned away from the mirror and opened the bedroom door. The main room of the cabin was empty, but the front door stood open, letting in the mountain air and the sound of voices from outside. Marguerite stepped onto the porch, blinking in the bright sunlight. Martha was hanging laundry on a line stretched between two pines while Owen split wood nearby, his shirt dampened with sweat from the exertion. It was Martha who noticed her first. "Well, good afternoon, sleepyhead," she called, but her tone was kind, feeling more human. "Afternoon," Marguerite asked, surprised. "How long did I sleep?" "Going on 14 hours, Owen said, pausing in his work and leaning on the axe handle. "You needed it by the look of you." Marguerite flushed, embarrassed at being such an imposition, but Martha waved off her apology. "Nonsense. Rest is the best medicine. Now you must be starving. Come help me finish this, and we'll get some food in you." Working alongside, Martha felt oddly normal, as if Marguerite had known her for years rather than hours. The older woman chatted easily about the mountain weather, the fox she'd seen near the chicken coop that morning, the vegetables growing in her small garden, ordinary things that had nothing to do with the extraordinary circumstances that had brought Marguerite to her door. Owen continued his work, and Marguerite found her gaze drawn to him more than once. There was an ease to his movements, a quiet confidence that stood in stark contrast to Gerald's perpetual dissatisfaction. When he caught her watching, he smiled, a simple, open expression without demand or expectation. Later, over a simple meal of rabbit stew and cornbread, the conversation turned inevitably to what came next. "Thompson will have noticed you're gone by now," Owen said. "Word in town will spread fast." Marguerite nodded, her appetite diminishing at the thought. "He'll be furious." "Let him rage," Martha said firmly. "You're safe here for now. The question is, what do you want to do?" Marguerite set down her spoon, considering. "I've been thinking about that. I could go to Denver, maybe find work as a seamstress." It had been her trade before marriage, one of the few respectable options for a woman alone. "That's one option," Owen agreed, "but Denver's the first place he'd look." "What about divorce?" Martha suggested bluntly. Marguerite nearly choked on her water. "Divorce? That's impossible." "Not impossible," Martha corrected. "Difficult, especially for a woman, but not impossible, particularly if there's evidence of cruelty." Marguerite unconsciously touched her bruised cheek. "There's evidence aplenty, but who would believe me over him? He's Gerald Thompson." "Times are changing," Owen said quietly. "Slowly maybe, but they are, and not everyone in Silver Creek is blind to what kind of man Thompson is." "Even so," Marguerite said, "a divorce would mean returning, facing him in court. I don't think I could." Her voice trailed off, the fear too large to articulate. "You don't have to decide everything today," Martha assured her. "You're welcome here while you figure things out." "I can't impose," Marguerite began, but Owen cut her off. "It's not an imposition. Martha could use the help around here, and I'll be staying for a while too." This was news to Marguerite. "You will. But your job at the ranch, I've arranged for some time off," Owen said, not quite meeting her eyes. "Told them I had family matters to attend to." Martha snorted. "Which isn't entirely a lie, given that you've brought a woman in trouble to my doorstep." Marguerite felt warmth spread through her chest at their easy acceptance, their willingness to rearrange their lives to help her. It was a kindness she'd almost forgotten existed. "Thank you," she said simply, unable to find words adequate for her gratitude. After the meal, as Martha went to check her garden, Owen invited Marguerite for a walk to see the small waterfall that fed the creek running past the cabin. "It's not far," he promised, "and the path is easy enough." The late afternoon sun filtered through the pines as they followed the creek upstream. Marguerite breathed deeply, savoring the scent of pine and wild sage, so different from the town smells of coal smoke and dust. "It's beautiful here," she said. Owen nodded. Martha found this place after her husband died in '71, wanted somewhere quiet, away from people's pity. "I didn't know she was a widow," Marguerite said, surprised. 7 years now. Frank was a good man, took a fever that winter and was gone in 3 days. Owen's face softened with remembered grief. "Martha needed a fresh start, seems to be a family trait." "And you?" Marguerite asked. "What's your story?" Owen Riley. He was quiet for a moment, considering. "Not much to tell. Grew up in Texas, came north after the war looking for something different. Been working ranches ever since. No wife, family, no wife," he confirmed. "Had a sweetheart once back in Texas. She married someone else while I was away fighting. There was old pain there, but not the bitterness Marguerite might have expected, just acceptance." "I'm sorry," she said. Owen shrugged. "Life takes unexpected turns. Sometimes what seems like bad luck turns out to be a doorway to something better." They reached the waterfall, a modest cascade tumbling over moss-covered rocks into a clear pool below. The sound of rushing water filled the air, peaceful and constant. "This is my favorite spot," Owen said, leading her to a flat boulder beside the pool. "Good place to think." They sat in companionable silence for a while, watching the play of light on water. Marguerite felt a strange peace settle over her, despite the uncertainty of her situation. "Owen," she said finally, "when you found me in the stable, why did you stop? Most men would have kept walking." He studied the waterfall for a long moment before answering. "My mother," he said simply. "She was married to a man like Thompson, mean when he drank, and he drank often." "What happened to her?" Marguerite asked, though she feared she knew the answer. "She died when I was 14. Fell down the stairs, they said." His jaw tightened. "But I knew. And I promised myself that if I ever saw another woman in that situation, I wouldn't look the other way." Marguerite's throat tightened with emotion. "I'm so sorry about your mother." "It was a long time ago," Owen said, "but some promises you don't forget." Impulsively, she reached out and touched his hand where it rested on the rock between them. "Thank you for keeping it." His eyes met hers, something unreadable in their depths. For a moment, Marguerite thought he might turn his hand to clasp hers, but instead he stood, offering a steadying arm as she rose. "We should head back before Martha sends out a search party," he said, his tone lighter. "She's made me promise to fix her roof before the next rain." As they walked back toward the cabin, Marguerite felt a curious lightness. For the first time in years, she was walking beside a man without fear, without calculating his mood or censoring her words. It was a small freedom, but precious for its rarity. The days that followed settled into a surprisingly comfortable routine. Marguerite helped Martha with household tasks, cooking, cleaning, mending clothes that had been set aside for lack of time. Owen worked on repairs around the cabin, splitting wood for the coming winter, and occasionally riding into the nearest town for supplies. At first, Marguerite jumped at every sound, expecting Gerald or his men to appear at any moment. But as days turned into a week, then too, the constant fear began to recede, replaced by a cautious optimism. She learned that Martha had been a schoolteacher before her marriage, and still kept a small library of books that she generously shared. In the evenings, they would often read aloud by the fire poetry and novels that Marguerite had never been allowed to enjoy under Gerald's roof, where he considered such pastimes frivolous. Owen proved to be an attentive listener, though he claimed he had little education himself. "My schooling ended when the war began," he explained one evening, "but I always liked hearing stories." Marguerite discovered she had a talent for storytelling, embellishing the plots of novels she remembered from her youth, making Martha laugh and Owen's eyes crinkle with amusement. These simple pleasures, conversation, laughter, the sharing of ideas without fear of ridicule, felt like luxuries after the austerity of her marriage. But it wasn't all easy. Nightmares plagued her sleep, vivid dreams where Gerald found her, dragged her back, punished her for daring to leave. She would wake gasping, heart racing, convinced he was in the room with her. One particularly bad night, her cry woke the household. Martha appeared first, then Owen, concern etched on both their faces. "He was here," Marguerite gasped, still half in the dream. "He found me." "It was just a dream," Martha soothed, sitting on the edge of the bed. "You're safe here." Owen remained in the doorway, a respectful distance away. "Would you like some tea?" he offered. "My mother always said chamomile settles the nerves." Marguerite nodded, embarrassed by her outburst but grateful for their understanding. While Martha stayed with her, Owen went to the kitchen to heat water. "The dreams will fade with time," Martha assured her, patting her hand. "Fear doesn't disappear overnight." "I feel so foolish," Marguerite confessed, "acting like a frightened child." "There's no shame in fear, only in letting it rule you," Martha said firmly. "And you, my dear, have shown more courage than most by leaving that situation." When Owen returned with the tea, Marguerite noticed he'd taken the time to pull on a shirt over his long underwear, a small courtesy that touched her. "Thank you," she said, accepting the steaming cup. "I'm sorry to have disturbed your rest." "No disturbance," he assured her. "I was awake anyway." It was a kind lie, and they all knew it, but Marguerite appreciated the gesture. After that night, something shifted subtly in their interactions. Owen seemed more attentive, finding small ways to ease her burdens, carrying water from the well before she could offer, bringing wildflowers he'd found on his rides to brighten the kitchen table, teaching her to fish in the creek when she expressed interest. For her part, Marguerite found herself increasingly aware of his presence, the timbre of his laugh, the way sunlight caught in his dark hair, the careful strength in his hands as he worked. She told herself it was natural, this awareness. He had saved her after all. Gratitude could easily be mistaken for more complicated feelings. But when their hands accidentally touched while passing dishes at dinner, the jolt she felt had nothing to do with gratitude. One afternoon, about 3 weeks after her arrival, Owen returned from town earlier than expected, his expression troubled. "What is it?" Martha asked as he entered the cabin. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Owen glanced at Marguerite, hesitating. "News from Silver Creek," he finally said. "Thompson's got men looking for you all over the territory, offering a reward." Marguerite's hands stilled in the dough she was kneading. "How much?" "$500. a substantial sum more than many men earned in a year, enough to tempt even decent people to betray her whereabouts. "Did anyone recognize you in town?" Martha asked sharply. Owen shook his head. "No one from Silver Creek there today, but rumors travel. We need to be more careful." "Perhaps I should leave," Marguerite said quietly. "Go further away. I've imposed on your kindness too long already." "Nonsense," Martha said firmly. "This cabin's as safe as anywhere. We just need to limit trips to town, be cautious about who we speak to." Owen nodded agreement. "I've been thinking about this. Thompson can't keep up the search forever. Eventually, he'll either give up or make a mistake." "What kind of mistake?" Marguerite asked. "The kind that gives us leverage," Owen said. "From what I hear, he's telling people you were abducted, playing the grieving husband." Marguerite's laugh was bitter. "Of course he is. Heaven forbid anyone think his wife left him voluntarily." "But that's a story that could backfire," Martha said thoughtfully. "If you were to suddenly reappear, very much not abducted." "And make public why you really left," Owen added. "With those bruises as evidence, the bruises are almost gone," Marguerite interrupted, touching her cheek where only the faintest yellow discoloration remained. "But not the ones on your ribs," Martha pointed out. "And I'd wager they're not the first he's given you." Marguerite looked away. "It would be my word against his. A hysterical woman making accusations against a respected businessman." "Not if you had witnesses," Owen said. "People who have seen how he treats you behind closed doors." "The servants," Marguerite realized. "They've seen everything." "But they'd never speak against him. They need their positions too badly." "Everyone has their price," Martha said pragmatically. "And not all of it is money. Sometimes it's just knowing they're doing the right thing." Marguerite shook her head, unable to imagine confronting Gerald, let alone challenging him publicly. The very thought made her stomach clench with fear. "I can't," she whispered. "I'm not strong enough." Owen crossed the room to where she stood, stopping just short of touching her. "You're stronger than you know," he said quietly. "You've already done the hardest part by leaving." His faith in her was humbling, and for a moment Marguerite allowed herself to see through his eyes not a frightened runaway, but a woman brave enough to seek a better life. "I need time," she finally said, "to think about it." Owen nodded. Of course, there's no rush to decide, but time, it seemed, was not on their side. The very next morning, as Marguerite was gathering eggs from Martha's small henhouse, she heard the sound of approaching horses, not one, but several. Moving at speed, her heart lurched. They had no expected visitors. Clutching the basket of eggs, she ran back to the cabin, bursting through the door. "Riders coming." Owen was instantly alert, moving to the window while Martha calmly took down the rifle from above the fireplace. "How many?" Owen asked, peering through the curtain. "I don't know. Several. Coming fast up the trail." Owen's expression hardened as he caught sight of the approaching group. "4 men. Don't recognize them." "Thompson's men?" Martha asked, checking the rifle's load. "Could be, or just travelers." But Owen's hand moved to the revolver at his hip, a gesture that belied his casual words. "What should we do?" Marguerite asked, fear making her voice shake. Owen thought for a moment, then made a decision. "Martha, take Mrs. Thompson to the root cellar. I'll handle this." "Owen," Martha began to protest. "It's better if they don't see either of you," he insisted. "If they're just passing through, I'll send them on their way if they're looking for her." He left the implication hanging. Martha nodded reluctantly. "Come on," she said to Marguerite, moving toward the trapdoor hidden beneath a rug in the corner of the kitchen. "Be careful," Marguerite told Owen, unable to keep the fear from her voice. His eyes met hers, steady and reassuring. "Always am." The root cellar was cool and dark, smelling of earth and the vegetables stored there. Martha closed the trapdoor silently above them, leaving just enough gap to hear what transpired in the cabin. Marguerite's heart pounded so loudly she was certain it must be audible. Martha's hand found hers in the darkness, squeezing reassuringly. They heard the riders arrive, the sound of men dismounting, then a knock at the cabin door. "Hello, the house." A voice called unfamiliar to Marguerite, which both relieved and frightened her. Not Gerald, at least, but possibly men in his employ. Owen's footsteps crossed the cabin and they heard the door open. "Afternoon," Owen's voice, casual but alert. "Something I can help you with, maybe," the stranger replied. "We're looking for a woman, runaway from Silver Creek. Her husband's offering a reward for information." "Is that so?" Owen sounded mildly interested, nothing more. What she looked like, this runaway, pretty thing. Dark hair, green eyes, name's Marguerite Thompson. In the darkness, Marguerite felt Martha's grip tighten on her hand. "Can't say I've seen anyone matching that description," Owen replied easily. "Don't get many travelers up this way." There was a pause, then the sound of boots on the cabin floor. They'd entered without invitation. "Mind if we look around?" the man asked, though it wasn't really a question. "Just to be thorough." "Actually, I do mind," Owen's voice had hardened. "This is private property. We won't take long. Mr. Thompson's real concerned about his wife, says she ain't in her right mind." "I'm sure he is," Owen replied, a subtle edge to his tone. "But as I said, she's not here and you're not welcome to search my sister's home without cause." Another pause, longer this time. The tension was palpable even from the root cellar. "Your sister's home, you say?" the man asked. "Where is she then?" "Visiting neighbors," Owen lied smoothly. "Due back any time." "Convenient," the man said, skepticism evident. "Look, Cowboy, we can do this easy or hard. We're going to search this place one way or another." Marguerite's blood ran cold. Beside her, she felt Martha shifting, perhaps reaching for a weapon of her own. "I wouldn't advise that," Owen said, his voice dangerously quiet. "Unless you're certain this woman is worth dying for." The threat hung in the air, unmistakable. Marguerite held her breath, terrified of what might happen next. Then a new voice spoke, younger, uncertain. "Come on, Harlan. The woman ain't here. We still got 3 more places to check before sundown." "Yeah," a third man agreed. "Thompson didn't say nothing about shooting nobody. Just find the woman." A tense silence followed, broken only by the creak of floorboards as someone shifted weight. "All right," the first man, Harlan, finally said. "We'll move on. But I got a feeling you're not telling us everything, Cowboy." "That's my business," Owen replied evenly. "Now I'd appreciate it if you'd mount up and ride out." The sound of boots on the floor again, moving toward the door. The creak of saddle leather and jingle of spurs as the men remounted. "We'll be watching this place," Harlan called, a parting threat. "Thompson's real generous with that reward money." Then hoofbeats, fading as the riders departed down the trail. Marguerite released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Martha pushed open the trapdoor and they emerged to find Owen standing by the window, watching the riders disappear into the trees. "They're gone," he confirmed, turning to face them. "For now. You think they'll be back?" Martha asked, setting her rifle against the wall. Owen nodded grimly. "Harlan's not the type to let things go, and $500 is a powerful motivator." Marguerite sank into a chair, her legs suddenly unable to support her. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I've brought this danger to your home." "Nonsense," Martha said briskly. "It's not your fault. Thompson's a vindictive snake." Owen crossed to Marguerite, crouching beside her chair to meet her eyes. "But this changes things. It's not safe for you here anymore." "Where can I go?" Marguerite asked, despair threatening to overwhelm her. "If he's got men searching everywhere." "There's only one place Thompson wouldn't think to look for you," Owen said slowly. "Silver Creek itself." Martha stared at her brother. Have you lost your mind? Think about it, Owen insisted. Those men are searching remote cabins, neighboring towns. The last place they'd expect her to go is back to Silver Creek. It's too dangerous, Marguerite protested. If Gerald saw me not staying with him, Owen clarified, but there are people in town who might help. The preacher's wife, for one. She runs that women's aid society. Mrs. Winters, Marguerite asked, surprised. I hardly know her. But she knows Thompson, Owen said. And from what I've heard, she's no admirer of his. She might be willing to help, especially if she saw those bruises. Martha was shaking her head. It's a terrible risk. Staying here is a worse one, Owen countered. Those men will be back, maybe with more, and next time they might not leave so easily. Marguerite looked between the siblings, torn between fear of returning to Silver Creek and the knowledge that she'd put them in danger by staying. When? She asked quietly. Owen met her gaze, understanding the question. Tonight, under cover of darkness, I know back trails they won't be watching. I'll come with you, Martha declared. No, Owen said firmly. You need to stay here, make everything look normal. If they're watching the cabin, they'll get suspicious if we all disappear. Martha clearly didn't like it, but she nodded reluctantly. Be careful, both of you. As Marguerite rose to prepare for the journey, she felt oddly calm. Perhaps it was simply that making a decision, any decision, was better than waiting for disaster to find them. Or perhaps it was knowing that Owen would be with her, this man who had already risked so much on her behalf, whose steady presence had become her anchor in the storm of uncertainty. Whatever lay ahead in Silver Creek, she wouldn't face it alone. The night was moonless, perfect for their clandestine departure. Martha had packed food and a change of clothes for Marguerite, while Owen readied his horse and checked his weapons. Take the old mining trail past Widow's Peak, Martha advised as they prepared to leave. It's longer but less traveled. Owen nodded, helping Marguerite mount before swinging up behind her. We should reach Silver Creek by dawn if we push hard. Martha pressed something into Marguerite's hand, a small Derringer pistol. Just in case, she said quietly. It's loaded and ready. Marguerite stared at the weapon, then carefully tucked it into her pocket. Thank you for everything. Go safely, Martha said, stepping back, and come back when you can. As they rode away from the cabin, Marguerite felt a pang of loss. In just a few weeks, the mountain hideaway had begun to feel like home in a way Gerald's grand house never had. They rode in silence for the first few miles, alert for any sign of pursuit. Owen kept them to game trails and shallow streams, avoiding the main paths where possible. The forest was alive with night sounds, the hoot of owls, the distant howl of coyotes, the rustle of small creatures in the underbrush. Eventually, convinced they weren't being followed, Owen relaxed slightly. We can talk now, he said, his voice low near her ear. Though best keep it quiet. Marguerite nodded, acutely aware of his chest against her back, his arms on either side of her as he held the reins. The physical closeness was both comforting and unsettling in ways she couldn't quite define. You really think Mrs. Winters will help me? She asked. I believe she will, Owen replied. She's known for her charitable work with women in difficult circumstances, and from what I've heard, she's one of the few people in town not intimidated by Thompson. Her husband is the preacher, Marguerite mused. Gerald can hardly threaten a man of God without losing face. Exactly, Owen said, approval in his tone. And the church has rooms they use for travelers in need. You could stay there while we figure out next steps. Marguerite questioned, turning slightly to see his face in the darkness. Owen's expression was solemn. I said I wouldn't leave you stranded. I meant it. The simple declaration warmed her more than it should have. You've already done more than anyone could expect, she said. You have your own life, your job at the ranch. Some things are more important than a job, Owen interrupted gently. Besides, I've been thinking about moving on anyway. Silver Creek was never meant to be permanent. The thought of Owen leaving stirred an unexpected dismay in Marguerite's heart. She'd come to rely on his steadfast presence, his quiet strength. The idea of facing her uncertain future without him was more distressing than she wanted to admit. "Where would you go?" she asked, trying to keep her tone casual. Owen was quiet for a moment, guiding the horse around a fallen tree before answering. "I've been saving for a place of my own. Small ranch, maybe up north in Montana Territory, enough land for some cattle, horses." "It sounds lovely," Marguerite said sincerely, imagining wide open spaces, mountains in the distance, a simple house with a porch facing the sunset. "It's just a dream for now," Owen said, a smile in his voice. "But dreams have a way of coming true if you work hard enough." They fell into companionable silence, each lost in their own thoughts as the horse carried them steadily through the night. The rhythm of hoofbeats and the shared warmth between them created a strange intimacy, a bubble of connection in the vast wilderness. As the eastern sky began to lighten with the first hint of dawn, Owen guided them to a small stream for a brief rest. He helped Marguerite dismount, both of them stiff from the long ride. "We're about an hour from town," he said, letting the horse drink while they stretched their legs. "We should talk about what happens when we get there." Marguerite nodded, splashing cold water on her face to refresh herself. "I've been thinking about that. It might be better if we don't arrive together." "Why not?" Owen asked, frowning. "If Gerald has men watching the roads, seeing me with you would immediately put you in danger," she explained. "Better if I enter town alone, go straight to the church. You can follow later as if on unrelated business." Owen didn't like it. She could see it in his expression, but he acknowledged the logic. "All right, but I'll be watching from a distance. Make sure you get there safely." "I'll be fine," Marguerite assured him, more confidently than she felt. "It's early. Most of the town will still be asleep." Owen studied her face in the growing light, his eyes troubled. "Marguerite," he said, the first time he'd used her given name, "if anything happens, if Thompson sees you or his men, you run. Don't try to face him. Just run for the church." The concern in his voice touched her deeply. "I will," she promised. They continued their journey as the sky brightened, stopping just outside town in a copse of trees that provided cover while offering a view of Silver Creek's main street. The town was just beginning to stir, smoke rising from chimneys, a few early risers heading to work. "The church is there," Owen pointed to a white steeple visible at the far end of the street. "Mrs. Winters lives in the parsonage beside it." Marguerite nodded, suddenly nervous now that the moment had arrived. 3 weeks ago, she'd fled this place in fear and desperation. Now she was voluntarily returning, gambling her future on the kindness of a near stranger. "What if she turns me away?" she whispered, voicing her deepest fear. Owen's hand found hers, warm and reassuring. "She won't. But if she does, we'll find another way. I won't let him take you back." The fierce certainty in his voice gave her courage. Impulsively, she leaned forward and pressed a quick kiss to his cheek. "Thank you," she said, then slipped from the horse before he could respond. Owen remained mounted, watching as she straightened her clothes and took a deep breath. "I'll be right behind you," he promised. "Go with God, Marguerite." With one last look at him, memorizing the way the early light gilded his features, she turned and walked toward Silver Creek, toward whatever fate awaited her there. The town was eerily familiar yet strange, as if Marguerite was seeing it through new eyes. She kept to the shadows where possible, heart pounding whenever someone passed, though none seemed to notice her. The church loomed ahead, its white clapboard walls gleaming in the morning sun. Beside it stood the parsonage, a modest two-story house with curtained windows and a small garden. As Marguerite approached, she saw smoke rising from the kitchen chimney. Someone was awake. Taking a deep breath, she climbed the 3 steps to the porch and knocked on the door, praying that Mrs. Winters herself would answer. Footsteps approached from within, and then the door swung open to reveal a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and gray-streaked brown hair. Her expression changed from polite inquiry to shock as she recognized her visitor. "Mrs. Thompson," she exclaimed. "Good heavens, Mrs. Winters," Marguerite said quickly before the woman could call out or close the door. "I need your help, please." Something in her tone must have conveyed her desperation, for Mrs. Winters glanced past her to the street, then stepped back. "Come in quickly," she urged. Marguerite entered the parsonage, relief making her lightheaded. The interior was modestly furnished but welcoming, with the smell of fresh bread and coffee filling the air. Mrs. Winters led her to the kitchen at the rear of the house, away from windows facing the street. "Sit," she commanded, pointing to a chair at the small table. "You look exhausted." Marguerite sank gratefully into the seat while the older woman busied herself pouring coffee. "Everyone's been looking for you," Mrs. Winters said, her back turned. "Mr. Thompson has men searching all over the territory. He's telling people you were abducted." "I wasn't abducted," Marguerite said firmly. "I left." Mrs. Winters turned, studying her with shrewd eyes. "Because of these?" she asked quietly, nodding toward the fading bruises on Marguerite's face and wrists. Marguerite nodded, unable to speak past the sudden lump in her throat. "I suspected as much," Mrs. Winters sighed, setting a cup of coffee before her. "Those fancy dresses don't hide everything, my dear. And some of us have seen that look in a woman's eyes before." "Then you'll help me?" Marguerite asked, hope rising. "Of course I will," Mrs. Winters said without hesitation. "The church has always been a sanctuary for those in need. But I must warn you, your husband has considerable influence in this town. Hiding you here won't be easy." "I'm not asking to hide forever," Marguerite explained. "Just long enough to figure out what to do next, maybe seek a divorce." Mrs. Winters' eyebrows rose. "Divorce is a serious step, especially for a woman. The courts rarely favor wives in such matters." "I know," Marguerite acknowledged, "but I can't go back to him. I won't." The older woman studied her for a long moment, then nodded decisively. "Then we'll find a way. The rooms above the church hall are private enough. You can stay there while we sort this out." Relief washed over Marguerite like a physical force. "Thank you," she whispered. "I don't know how to repay your kindness." "No repayment necessary," Mrs. Winters assured her. "Now drink your coffee while I prepare the room. Then you can tell me exactly what happened." As Mrs. Winters bustled away, Marguerite sipped the strong coffee, feeling safe for the first time since leaving Martha's cabin. Outside, she knew Owen was watching, making sure she'd arrived safely. The thought of him waiting, concerned for her welfare, brought a warmth to her chest that had nothing to do with the hot beverage. When Mrs. Winters returned, Marguerite told her everything: Gerald's escalating cruelty, her escape with Owen's help, the weeks hiding at Martha's cabin, and finally the arrival of the men searching for her. "This cowboy," Mrs. Winters said thoughtfully when Marguerite finished. "He took quite a risk helping you." "He did," Marguerite agreed. "I owe him my life." Something in her tone must have revealed more than she intended, for Mrs. Winters gave her a knowing look. "And perhaps your heart as well," Marguerite flushed, looking away. "I'm still a married woman," she said, though the words sounded hollow even to her own ears. "For now," Mrs. Winters agreed, not pressing the issue. "But situations change, and a good man is rare enough in this world that one shouldn't be too quick to dismiss the possibility." Before Marguerite could respond, a knock came at the back door, a specific pattern of 3 raps, pause, then 2 more. Mrs. Winters smiled. That would be my husband returning from his morning walk. She rose to answer it, but instead of the preacher, Owen stood on the threshold, hat in hand. "Forgive the intrusion, madam," he said politely. "I'm looking for—" His words cut off as he spotted Marguerite at the table, relief flooding his features. "You made it," he said simply. "As did you," Marguerite replied, unable to keep the smile from her face. "Mrs. Winters looked between them, understanding dawning in her expression. "You must be the cowboy," she said. "Come in quickly before someone sees you." Owen entered, closing the door behind him. In the small kitchen, he seemed larger somehow, his presence filling the space in a way that made Marguerite acutely aware of him. "Mrs. Winters has offered me sanctuary in the church rooms," she told him. Owen nodded, turning to the older woman with genuine gratitude. "Thank you, madam." Not everyone would be willing to take such a risk. "The Lord's work often involves risk, young man," Mrs. Winters replied, but her eyes were kind. "Now both of you should rest. You look dead on your feet and there's much to discuss later." She showed them to the church annex, a separate building connected to the main church by a covered walkway. Upstairs were 3 small but clean rooms used for visiting preachers or church members in temporary need. "You'll be safe here," Mrs. Winters assured them. "I'll bring food later, and my husband will want to speak with you when he returns from his morning visits." Left alone, Marguerite and Owen stood awkwardly in the narrow hallway between the rooms. "You should rest," Owen said, gesturing to the nearest door. "It's been a long night." "So should you," Marguerite countered. "You've had no sleep either." They stared at each other for a long moment, neither moving. There were things Marguerite wanted to say about his courage, his kindness, the feelings that had begun to grow during their time together. But exhaustion and uncertainty made the words stick in her throat. "Owen," she began, not sure what would follow. "Rest," he said again, gently this time. "We'll talk later." He moved to the farthest room, pausing at the door. "I'm glad you're safe," he said quietly, then disappeared inside. Marguerite entered her own room, a small space with a narrow bed, washstand, and chair by the window. She removed her shoes and lay down, expecting sleep to claim her immediately after the long journey. Instead, her mind raced with thoughts of Gerald, of the uncertain future, and most persistently, of Owen, his steady presence beside her through the night, the warmth of his hand on hers, the look in his eyes when he'd found her safe at Mrs. Winters' table. Mrs. Winters' words echoed in her mind. A good man is rare enough in this world. Eventually, exhaustion overcame her churning thoughts, and Marguerite drifted into a dreamless sleep, the first truly peaceful rest she'd had since fleeing her husband's house. She woke to the sound of voices, low, urgent, coming from beyond her door. For a disorienting moment, Marguerite feared Gerald had found her, but then she recognized Owen's distinctive drawl, along with an unfamiliar male voice that must belong to Reverend Winters. Rising quickly, she straightened her rumpled clothes and smoothed her hair before opening the door. The conversation in the hallway stopped abruptly as both men turned to look at her. Beside Owen stood a tall, thin man with silver hair and kind eyes, Reverend Winters, whom she knew only from a distance, having attended church infrequently due to Gerald's disinterest in religion. "Mrs. Thompson," the preacher greeted her warmly. "I hope you were able to rest." "Yes, thank you," Marguerite replied, glancing at Owen, who looked tense. "Is something wrong?" The men exchanged a look before Reverend Winters answered. "Your husband has called a town meeting for this afternoon. He's offering an increased reward for information about your whereabouts, $1,000 now." Marguerite felt the blood drain from her face. $1,000. That's a fortune. It's a problem, Owen agreed grimly. That kind of money will have everyone looking, asking questions. Someone's bound to notice we arrived this morning. What should we do? Marguerite asked, fear creeping back into her voice. Reverend Winters sighed. My wife and I have been discussing this. We believe the best approach may be directness. What do you mean? Owen asked, frowning. Appear at the town meeting, the preacher said simply. Let everyone see that Mrs. Thompson is not abducted but left of her own free will. Make your case directly to the townspeople before Thompson can control the narrative. Marguerite stared at him aghast. Face Gerald publicly. I can't, you can, Owen interrupted, his eyes intent on hers. You're stronger than you know, remember. The echo of his earlier words gave her pause. Was she strong enough? The very thought of confronting Gerald, of standing before the entire town, made her stomach clench with fear. What would I even say? She asked weakly. The truth, Reverend Winters suggested. God's light shines brightest on honesty, my dear. Tell them why you left. Show them your bruises. People are not blind, nor are they heartless. Many have suspected what goes on in your home but lack the courage or opportunity to intervene. And if they don't believe me, Marguerite whispered, if Gerald convinces them I'm lying or hysterical, then we leave, Owen said firmly. Together. I have enough saved to get us far from here. Start fresh somewhere Thompson can't reach. His words hung in the air between them, laden with implications neither had dared voice until now. Reverend Winters looked between them, understanding in his wise eyes. Consider carefully, he advised. Both options carry risk, but hiding forever is its own kind of prison. He excused himself to help his wife prepare lunch, leaving Marguerite and Owen alone in the hallway. Did you mean that? Marguerite asked quietly. About leaving together? Owen met her gaze steadily. I did. If that's what you want. The simplicity of his offer, no demands, no conditions, just a choice freely given, moved her deeply. I don't know what I want, she admitted, except not to go back to him. Not ever. Owen nodded, understanding. Then that's where we start. The rest. He hesitated, then continued more softly. The rest can wait until you're free to choose. His restraint, his respect for her situation despite the feelings growing between them, only increased her admiration for him. Gerald had never asked what she wanted, had simply taken what he desired without consideration for her wishes. I think Reverend Winters is right, Marguerite said slowly. Hiding won't solve anything. Sooner or later Gerald would find me. You want to go to the town meeting? Owen asked, surprise evident in his tone. Marguerite nodded, a strange calm settling over her as the decision solidified. Yes, I'm tired of running, tired of fear. If there's any chance of truly escaping him, it starts with standing my ground. Pride shone in Owen's eyes, warming her from within. Then I'll be right beside you, he promised. No, Marguerite said firmly. You've risked enough already. If this goes badly, I don't want you caught in the aftermath. Marguerite, Owen began to protest, but she cut him off. Listen to me. Gerald is vindictive. If he connects you to my escape, he'll destroy you. I couldn't bear that. Owen's expression was stubborn. I'm not afraid of Thompson. I know you're not, Marguerite said gently. That's what worries me. Please, Owen, let me do this my way. Be there, yes, but not openly as my champion. Not yet. She could see he wanted to argue further, but something in her expression must have convinced him of her determination. All right, he conceded reluctantly. Your way, but I'll be watching. If things turn ugly, they won't, Marguerite said with more confidence than she felt. The townspeople are good at heart. They just need to see the truth. As the hour of the town meeting approached, Marguerite prepared herself as best she could. Mrs. Winters had lent her a simple but respectable dress, and helped arrange her hair neatly. The bruise on her cheek had faded considerably, but the marks on her wrists and ribs remained visible evidence of Gerald's cruelty. "Are you certain about this?" Mrs. Winters asked as she pinned the last strand of Marguerite's hair. "Once you take this step, there's no going back." "I'm sure," Marguerite replied, studying her reflection in the small mirror. The woman who looked back at her seemed different somehow, still afraid, yes, but with a determination in her eyes that hadn't been there before. "I've been silent too long." The town meeting was to be held in the main square, where Gerald had erected a temporary platform. As Marguerite approached with Reverend and Mrs. Winters, she could see a substantial crowd had already gathered, nearly everyone in Silver Creek, it seemed, drawn by curiosity and the promise of drama. Gerald stood on the platform, dressed in his finest suit, the picture of a concerned husband. Beside him stood Sheriff Davis, looking uncomfortable with the proceedings but present nonetheless, a symbol of official support that made Marguerite's heart sink. "He's got the sheriff on his side," she whispered to Reverend Winters. "Davis is a good man at heart," the preacher assured her. "He follows the law, not Thompson's money. Give him reason to stand with you and he will." They stopped at the edge of the crowd, close enough to hear but not immediately visible to those on the platform. Owen was nowhere to be seen, but Marguerite knew he was watching from somewhere nearby, ready to intervene if necessary. Gerald's voice carried across the square, practiced and persuasive. "Friends and neighbors, I thank you for coming. As many of you know, my beloved wife Marguerite has been missing for nearly a month now. I have reason to believe she was taken against her will, possibly by outlaws passing through our territory." Murmurs rippled through the crowd, concern, speculation, the occasional skeptical snort. "I am increasing the reward for information leading to her safe return to $1,000, Gerald continued, producing a stack of bills from his pocket and holding them aloft. "I will pay this sum to anyone who helps bring my dear wife home." The crowd's reaction was immediate gasps, exclamations, people turning to whisper to their neighbors. $1,000 was more money than most of them would see in years. "Now is the time," Reverend Winters murmured to Marguerite, "before the reward blinds them to everything else." Marguerite nodded, her mouth dry with fear. Drawing a deep breath, she stepped forward, moving through the crowd which parted instinctively before her. "There's no need for a reward, Gerald," she called out, her voice stronger than she had expected. "I'm right here." A collective gasp went up from the crowd as they recognized her. Gerald froze on the platform, the money still clutched in his hand, his expression shifting rapidly from shock to relief to something darker, more calculating. "Marguerite," he exclaimed, recovering quickly. "Thank God." "I've been out of my mind with worry." He moved to descend from the platform, but Marguerite held up a hand, stopping him. "Don't," she said clearly. "Don't pretend this is a joyful reunion." The crowd went silent, tension crackling in the air. Gerald's face hardened, though he maintained a smile for the onlookers. "My dear, you're clearly distressed," he said, his voice dripping with false concern. "Let me take you home where we can talk privately, so you can continue what you started the night I left." Marguerite challenged, moving closer to the platform. "No, Gerald. Whatever happens now, I'm not going back to that house. I'm not going back to your fists." Another gasp from the crowd, followed by murmurs, some disbelieving, others knowing. Marguerite became aware of women in the crowd nodding, men shifting uncomfortably. Gerald's face darkened. "You don't know what you're saying," he hissed, no longer bothering to smile. "You're hysterical, confused. I know exactly what I'm saying," Marguerite interrupted, her courage growing with each word. She turned to face the crowd. "My husband is not the man you think he is. Behind closed doors, he's a monster who uses his fists when I displease him in the slightest way." She pulled up her sleeves, revealing the bruises on her wrists, then gestured to her face. "These are fading now, but they were much worse when I fled 3 weeks ago. There are more under this dress that haven't healed yet." The crowd's murmurs grew louder. Sheriff Davis stepped forward, his expression grave. "Mrs. Thompson, these are serious accusations," he said. "Do you stand by them?" "I do," Marguerite affirmed. "And I'm not the only one who knows the truth. Ask the servants who have heard my cries. Ask Dr. Wilson, who's treated my accidents. Ask anyone who's seen the fear in my eyes whenever Gerald enters a room." She spotted Dr. Wilson in the crowd, an elderly man who had indeed treated her multiple times. Their eyes met, and after a moment's hesitation, he nodded slightly acknowledgement of her words. Gerald, seeing his control of the situation slipping, changed tactics. "My wife has clearly been corrupted during her absence," he announced loudly. "Someone has poisoned her mind against me, perhaps the same person who took her from our home." "No one took me," Marguerite countered. "I left of my own free will after you beat me for serving undercooked beef at dinner. I hid in the stable, crying, until she caught herself just in time, unwilling to implicate Owen. Until I found the courage to leave," she finished. Gerald's face was thunderous now, his pretense of concern abandoned. "You ungrateful woman," he spat. "After everything I've given you, given me," Marguerite repeated incredulously. "You've given me nothing but pain and fear since the day we married. I was a grieving girl who had just lost her parents, and you saw an opportunity not for love, but for possession." The crowd was fully engaged now, watching the confrontation with a mixture of horror and fascination. Marguerite was dimly aware of people taking sides, some moving closer to her in support, others backing away, unwilling to oppose the town's most powerful man. "This is absurd," Gerald declared, appealing to Sheriff Davis. "She's my wife. Under the law, she belongs with me." "The law also forbids assault," Reverend Winters spoke up, moving to stand beside Marguerite. "And God's law demands that husbands love their wives as Christ loved the church, with sacrifice and tenderness, not violence." "Stay out of this, preacher," Gerald warned. "This is between me and my wife." "Not anymore," came a new voice, Mrs. Wilson, the doctor's wife, stepping forward from the crowd. "We've all suspected what was happening. We've all seen the bruises she tried to hide, heard the screams in the night." "It's true," added another woman, Mrs. Peterson from the millinery shop. "My sister worked in your house last year, Mr. Thompson. She left because she couldn't bear to watch what you did to your wife." One by one, others stepped forward, shopkeepers, servants, neighbors who had witnessed Gerald's cruelty or its aftermath. The tide of public opinion was turning, and Gerald could see it happening before his eyes, his face contorted with rage. "This is a conspiracy," he snarled. "You've all been bribed or coerced. Sheriff, I demand you arrest my wife and return her to my custody immediately." Sheriff Davis looked deeply uncomfortable. "Mr. Thompson, given these accusations and the visible evidence," he glanced at Marguerite's bruises, "I don't think that would be appropriate at this time." "You work for me," Gerald roared, abandoning all pretense of civility. "This town works for me. I own the bank, the mercantile. You may own businesses," interrupted Judge Fletcher, an elderly but respected figure who had been watching silently until now. "But you don't own people, Thompson. Not your wife, not the sheriff, and certainly not me." The judge approached Marguerite, his expression kind but serious. "Mrs. Thompson, do you wish to file for divorce on grounds of cruelty?" Marguerite's heart leapt at the unexpected question. "Yes," she said firmly. "I do." Gerald's face turned an alarming shade of purple. "You can't do this to me," he hissed. moving toward Marguerite with clenched fists. "I won't allow it." Several things happened at once. Sheriff Davis moved to intercept Gerald. Reverend Winters stepped protectively in front of Marguerite. And from somewhere in the crowd, Owen emerged, placing himself directly in Gerald's path. "That's far enough, Thompson," Owen said quietly but with unmistakable authority. Gerald stopped short, recognition dawning in his eyes. "You," he spat. "The new foreman at the Rockingham. You're the one who took her." "No one took me," Marguerite repeated firmly, moving to stand beside Owen. "He helped me escape when I had nowhere else to turn. He showed me kindness when all you gave was cruelty." The way she looked at Owen with gratitude, admiration, and something more was not lost on the crowd, nor on Gerald. "So that's it," Gerald sneered. "You found yourself a cowboy lover. Is that why you're inventing these lies about me?" "The only liar here is you," Owen replied evenly. "And everyone here knows it." Gerald lunged suddenly, aiming a punch at Owen's face. Owen sidestepped easily, letting Gerald's momentum carry him forward until he stumbled and fell to his knees in the dirt. The crowd gasped. Then a few laughed at the sight of the mighty Gerald Thompson on his knees in the town square. It was a fatal blow to his dignity and to his power over the town. Sheriff Davis stepped in, hauling Gerald to his feet. "That's enough," he said firmly. "Thompson, I'm placing you under arrest for attempted assault." "You can't arrest me," Gerald spluttered. "I'm the most important man in this town." "Not anymore," Judge Fletcher stated calmly. "Mrs. Thompson, I'll have divorce papers drawn up by tomorrow. Given the circumstances and evidence, I believe we can expedite the process." Marguerite stared at the judge in disbelief. "Really? It can be that simple?" "Not simple," the judge corrected with a small smile, "but necessary, and long overdue from what I've heard today." As Sheriff Davis led a protesting Gerald away, the crowd began to disperse, many stopping to offer Marguerite words of support or apologies for not intervening sooner. In the chaos, Owen's hand found hers, warm and steady. "You did it," he said quietly. "You stood your ground." "We did it," Marguerite corrected, squeezing his hand. "I couldn't have found the courage without you." Reverend and Mrs. Winters approached, both beaming with approval. "You're welcome to stay with us until everything is settled," Mrs. Winters offered. "It may take some time for the divorce to be finalized, even with Judge Fletcher expediting matters." "Thank you," Marguerite said sincerely, "for everything." As they walked back toward the church, Owen kept pace beside her, their hands still joined. The future remained uncertain in many ways, but for the first time in years, uncertainty felt like possibility rather than threat. "What will you do now?" Owen asked as they reached the church steps. "After the divorce." Marguerite turned to face him, studying his expression in the late afternoon light. "I'm not sure," she admitted. "I need to find work, a place to live." Owen hesitated, then spoke carefully as if weighing each word. "I meant what I said earlier. About leaving together, starting fresh somewhere new. If that's what you want." The offer hung between them, fraught with meaning. Marguerite was acutely aware of the Winters' discreet withdrawal, giving them privacy for this conversation. "Owen," she began, her heart racing, "I can't ask you to change your plans for me. Your dream of a ranch in Montana, dreams change," he interrupted gently. "Or rather, they grow to include new possibilities." He took a deep breath, then continued, "I care for you, Marguerite. More than I expected to, more than might be wise given your situation." The simple declaration sent warmth flooding through her. "I care for you too," she admitted, "but I don't want to rush from one man's protection to another's. I need to stand on my own at least for a while." Instead of disappointment, understanding filled Owen's eyes. "I respect that," he said, "and I'll wait if waiting is what you need." Marguerite felt tears prick her eyes at his willingness to give her the time and space to find herself a gift Gerald would never have conceived of, let alone offered. "Montana is a beautiful territory, I hear," she said softly. "Perhaps, when the time is right, I might like to see it for myself." Owen's smile was like sunrise after a long night. "I'd like that," he replied simply. In the weeks that followed, Silver Creek buzzed with the scandal of Gerald Thompson's arrest and impending divorce. Many who had once courted his favor now distanced themselves, especially after more of his unsavory business practices came to light during the investigation. Marguerite stayed with the Winters, helping at the church and slowly rebuilding her confidence. The divorce proceedings moved swiftly, thanks to Judge Fletcher's influence and the overwhelming evidence of Gerald's cruelty. When the final decree was granted, Marguerite felt a weight lift from her shoulders that she had carried for so long she'd forgotten what it was to stand straight. Through it all, Owen remained a steady presence respectful of her need for independence, but available whenever she needed support. He had taken a temporary position at the livery stable while she sorted out her affairs, postponing his plans to head north. Martha came to visit once the situation had stabilized, bringing with her Marguerite's few possessions from the cabin. The two women had formed a genuine friendship during Marguerite's time in hiding, and Martha was pleased to see her brother and his rescue growing closer by the day. "He looks at you the way Frank used to look at me," Martha observed as they walked in the church garden. "Like you're the answer to a question he's been asking his whole life." Marguerite blushed but didn't deny it. "He's a good man." "The best," Martha agreed, "and not one to rush into things. If he's waiting, it's because he believes you're worth waiting for." The divorce settlement, finalized 6 months after that fateful town meeting, granted Marguerite a modest sum from Gerald's assets, far less than she was entitled to, but enough to give her options. Gerald himself had left Silver Creek, his reputation in tatters, reportedly heading east to start over where his history wasn't known. On a crisp autumn morning, Marguerite sat on the church steps, a letter in her hands. It was an offer from a dress shop in Denver, a position as head seamstress, with the possibility of partnership if things went well. It was a good opportunity, a chance to use her skills and build something of her own. So why did the prospect fill her with such uncertainty? She was so lost in thought that she didn't notice Owen's approach until his shadow fell across the paper. "Good news?" he asked, nodding toward the letter. Marguerite looked up, taking in his familiar features, the lines at the corners of his eyes from squinting in the sun, the slight curl to his hair where it escaped his hat, the steady gaze that had become her anchor in a tumultuous sea. "A job offer," she explained. "In Denver." Owen nodded, his expression carefully neutral. "That's wonderful. You deserve the opportunity." "It is wonderful," Marguerite agreed. "Exactly what I thought I wanted." "Thought," Owen repeated, catching her choice of words. Marguerite folded the letter carefully, tucking it into her pocket. "I've been thinking a lot lately about what I want, what I need." She took a deep breath. "About Montana." Owen went very still. "What about Montana?" "I wonder if they need seamstresses there," Marguerite said, her heart pounding. "Or if a certain rancher might have use for a partner who knows how to keep accounts and isn't afraid of hard work." Hope dawned in Owen's eyes, but he spoke cautiously. "Are you sure? Denver would be easier, safer." "I've had enough of easy and safe," Marguerite interrupted. "They're just pretty words for a different kind of cage. What I want is a choice. A future I build with someone who sees me as an equal, not a possession." Owen moved closer, taking her hands in his. "Is that what you're choosing? A future with me?" Marguerite rose to her feet, bringing them face to face. "If you'll have me, if I'll have you," Owen repeated with a soft laugh. "Marguerite, I've been yours since I found you crying in that stable." He cupped her face gently, his touch reverent. "I love you," he said simply. "I've loved you through all of this, and I'll love you through whatever comes next." Tears sprang to Marguerite's eyes, not tears of fear or sorrow, but of a joy so pure it couldn't be contained. "I love you too," she whispered, "so much that it frightens me sometimes." "No more fear," Owen promised, drawing her closer. "Only hope from now on." When his lips met hers, Marguerite felt the last shadows of her past life dissolve in the warmth of his embrace. This kiss, their first, held none of the demand or possession she had known with Gerald. Instead, it was an offering, a promise, a beginning. They were married 2 weeks later in the church where she had found sanctuary, with Reverend Winters officiating and Martha standing as witness. The ceremony was simple but joyful, attended by the townspeople who had stood with Marguerite in her darkest hour. As they exchanged vows, Marguerite looked into Owen's eyes and saw not a savior or protector, but a partner, someone who would walk beside her rather than ahead or behind, who would value her strength rather than exploit her vulnerability. "I never thought I'd marry again," she admitted later, as they traveled north toward their new home. "After Gerald, I couldn't imagine trusting anyone that completely." Owen's arm tightened around her waist as they rode together, much as they had that first night fleeing Silver Creek. "Trust is earned," he said. "I plan to spend my life earning yours." Montana welcomed them with open skies and endless possibilities. The small ranch Owen purchased with their combined savings wasn't grand, but it was theirs, a place to build the life they both wanted, far from the shadows of the past. The first year was hard work fixing the cabin, acquiring stock, learning the rhythms of the land. But they faced each challenge together, equals in partnership as in love. Marguerite discovered strengths she never knew she possessed: resilience, creativity, a talent for negotiation that served them well when dealing with neighbors and suppliers. Owen proved to be the man she believed him to be: patient, kind, with a quiet strength that never turned to domination. Their disagreements, when they came, were resolved with respect rather than force. Their love deepened with each passing season, rooted in mutual admiration and unwavering support. 2 years after their arrival in Montana, their family grew with the birth of a daughter, named Martha after the woman who had sheltered Marguerite in her time of need. Holding her child, Marguerite marveled at the journey that had brought her to this moment, from a terrified woman hiding in a stable to a confident mother, wife, and partner in a thriving ranch. "She has your eyes," Owen observed, gazing down at their daughter with undisguised wonder. "And your stubbornness," Marguerite replied with a tired smile. "She certainly took her time arriving." Owen laughed, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "Some journeys are worth the wait." As their daughter grew, so did their ranch and their family, a son joining them 3 years later, followed by twin girls who brought equal measures of joy and chaos to their lives. Occasionally, news reached them from Silver Creek. Gerald Thompson had remarried in Boston to a wealthy widow who, rumors suggested, had already separated from him due to his difficult temperament. Judge Fletcher had retired, passing the mantle to a younger man with equally strong principles. The Winters continued their good works, writing regularly with town news and updates on their growing congregation. Each letter, each reminder of the past, served only to emphasize how far Marguerite had come, not just in distance, but in spirit. On the 10th anniversary of the night Owen found her crying in the stable, they sat together on the porch of their expanded home, watching their children play in the yard as the Montana sunset painted the sky in brilliant golds and pinks. "You ever regret it?" Owen asked quietly. Choosing this life instead of Denver, Marguerite leaned against his shoulder, contentment washing through her. Never, she said honestly. Not for a single day. Owen's arm wrapped around her, drawing her closer. Nor I, he murmured. You were the best decision I ever made. Even better than that bay mare you insisted was worth twice what the seller asked. Marguerite teased, referring to a long-standing joke between them. Owen laughed, the sound still as warm and genuine as it had been when she first heard it. Even better than the mare, he confirmed. Though it was a close thing. Their laughter mingled in the evening air, a testament to the joy they had built together from the ashes of her past. As darkness fell and they called the children in for dinner, Marguerite caught Owen's hand, stopping him at the threshold of their home. "Thank you," she said simply, the words inadequate for all she felt. Owen didn't need to ask what she meant. After a decade together, he knew her heart as well as his own. "No," he replied, his eyes reflecting the love that had sustained them through good times and hard. "Thank you for being brave enough to believe me when I said you didn't have to go back there." Their lips met in a kiss that held all the tenderness of their first and all the depth of the years between, a kiss that promised many more years to come, each better than the last. Inside, their children waited, their home glowed with warmth, and the future stretched before them like the vast Montana sky, open, free, and full of possibility.